Welcome back to my channel. In exploring the seas lies our prosperity. Thus, if you wish for the Highlanders to take part in our wealth and wisdom, this advice I shall give. Make it custom for the girls to ask their suitors, before they say yes, "What have you seen of the world? What can you tell your children about foreign lands and distant peoples?" If they do so, the boldest young men will come to us. They shall become wiser and richer, and we shall no longer have need of those useless types. Listen in as I speak to Jan Ott about some of the geographical references in Codex Oera Linda.
Yes, it's a very exciting but also very complex topic.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much geography in the Oera Linda, ranging all the way from the North Sea region and what is now Fryasland, the Netherlands, all the way down through the Mediterranean into India. And some of those places are described in quite a lot of detail, but the most detailed description is of Fryasland itself. And that's what we're going to focus in on today. We could do hours and hours about geography, but this is going to be the first installment. And a lot of the places we're going to talk about today are introduced in section 13I, which we call Along the Rhine. In this section 13I, we talk about Leidersburg, and then there's the Alderga and the Alderga mouth. There's the Treasure Burg. There's the Burg Forana. There is the Vlie Lake, as well as the Vliestroom. And then there's even a mention of Alkmarum.
Well, Leidersburg is thought to be Leiden, or where Leiden is. But the problem is it's very tempting to assume that, for example, Medeasblik will be Medemblik. And that Forana will have been Vronen. But some of the descriptions of these places would not really match with reality, if that is true. And it is very possible that some of the names have migrated.
So you're saying that the names still exist as they did back then, but it may actually be talking about a different place. Well, that's the hard part about the geography of this region, and that's what people who aren't from the Netherlands or aren't familiar with the history of it. It's always changing, right? What we call the Netherlands looks nothing like what would have been called Fryasland.
Yes, that's one thing, the coastline and also the big lake here, the Zuiderzee. In the time of Oera Linda was the Vliemar, the Vlie Lake. It was much smaller. It's known from history that has been a great flood where much land disappeared. And also in Oera Linda it is described that many lakes, after a big flood, there were many new lakes in West Vlieland. And from coastal villages is also known that sometimes when a village was drowned, then they built a new village more inland and gave it the same name. So if the old Medemblik was what is now water, then you won't find traces of the old Medemblik where now Medemblik is. And the same goes for Staveren.
Can I read out the little section from 13I then about the Alderga? So 13I talks about the trip that Apollonia took along the Rhine all the way up to what is now Switzerland, and then down the other side of the Rhine. And so at some point, she says, all along the far side of the Rhine, it was the same, talking about how poor the people were, down to Leidersburg, which you said may be Leiden. This burg had a great lake where people also lived in houses set upon pilings. So there's a lake mentioned that may or may not exist anymore. And then she says, finally, we arrived at the Alderga mouth. At the southern head of the harbor stands the Treasure Burg, a stone building where a variety of shells, horns, weapons, and clothes are kept, brought home from distant lands by the steersman. A quarter's distance from there is the Alderga, a great lake surrounded by barns, houses, and gardens, all richly ornamented. So before we talk about where it was, we recently have just speculated about the etymology or what the word means, Alderga, and you had an interesting idea about what the name Alderga might mean.
Yes, ga is the verb go, but there's also alder, like alder beste, very best, the very best, the best of all. So Alderga would mean where all go. The name may suggest that the water was a passage for all ships from the Free Lake to Ralda Sea.
Correct, yeah. In 13I it says, behind the lake a canal had been dug, which flowed past the Brug Forana and further through a narrow mouth into the sea. This was the way out for the fleet, and the flea was the way in. So because that's just the way it worked, you sailed in through the flea and you sailed out through this mouth into the North Sea. Alderga means that all ships went past, and I think it's quite an ingenious theory at any rate. It's not something that can really be proved, but it certainly sticks in. You can see it in the word.
And what's interesting, I'll open the new map that I made. Yes, so this is a reconstruction of Fryasland in the times of Oera Linda or a bit later. But here's the Flea the Flea Lake in the middle, and the Flea where ships would go out of the Flea normally. They could go out like this, especially if they go to the east. But I've tried to find the Alderga here. This is a fragment of I think a 16th century map, and here's a place Muiden, and this would be the southern part of the entrance of this water, which could be the Alderga. I don't know if it really was a big lake like this earlier. So this is where now Amsterdam is, and here is Muiden. And Muiden, it means mouth. But the narrow entrance was where from the canal. If this was Forana, it's now Beverwijk. On this map it's Beverwijk. And that corresponds with a lot of archaeological finds. Yes, this is one. On this map it is shown where most archaeological finds have been found. Archaeological sites are from the time that they call the Roman period. And there's a high concentration on Texel, which confirms that Texel was an important place. But also here in this area, Castricum Heemskerk, which is what I said earlier, Beverwijk is here. It's the end of the I. And this is also a very strategic place to have, because if you come over land from the south, you must pass here. So it's good to have a strong burg there.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and then from here there would be a canal to what's called in the book a narrow mouth, Egmond, Engemunda. And that would make sense, because here is the big the dunes.
You couldn't build it through the dunes, you'd have to go around them. Yeah.
And here is a very small part of the dunes, and I don't know if it was the same at that time, but that would make sense. And Alkmaar, because it says that Forana was north of Alkmaar. Alkmaar, as we know it now, is not a lake, it's a city, but it means lake. And here more south, and I need another map to show that, there were many big lakes, at some point at least. The Haarlemmermeer, it's now all polder. But here's I don't know if you see it, I can choose a larger. Here it is north-south. Here also is the lake from Leiden, which is described, where the black people lived on pole houses. Yeah, so Leiden is the end of the Rhine here. And then near Leiden, I don't know how. The Leidersburg may have been also not exactly on this place, but near perhaps. But what is here called Haarlemmermeer, or part of it, may have been the Alekmarum. There is a place Alkemade here. And the explanation of that name Alkemade, they also say it's similar to Alkmaar. It has the same root. So this would mean quite some shifting of place names. They would all have migrated north at some point.
I think we made a good presentation about the Alderga and the where that might have been, and it's going to take, like you said, it's going to take an interdisciplinary decades of interdisciplinary study to figure out exactly what's going on. Do you have anything you'd like to wrap up with?
Yeah, that I started this thread on the forum, and I will make a better description, perhaps a better title, where I will add more maps like this with fragments from the book, and then specific or a few geographical names and where I think they may be located. Some are more certain than others, like Texland is pretty sure that it was what is now this island, although the size may obviously have been has obviously changed. The Vlie is also certain, the Wezer, the Ursara, even the old spellings confirm that Ursara makes sense, as it is written in Oera Linda. And on the old forum on Unexplained Mysteries, there have been discussions about locations, and I've always been fascinated by it. So it's a lot of fun to study this.
All right, Jan. Well, I think we have presented about as much as we can, because that's about as far as the research has gone. But we will continue, and anyone out there listening is invited, of course, to give their opinions or information that we may not have in the comments below. I'd like to thank you for your time on this Friday.
Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, talk to you next time.